Let me back up a little. My name's Richard, recently retired after 40 years in civil engineering, and damn proud of it. I spent my whole life building cities, bridges, and water systems that kept people safe and traffic flowing. So when my wife Martha and I decided to settle into a peaceful retirement in a quiet Florida HOA community, I figured the hard part of life was behind me. Turns out the hard part was named Karen. Karen Thompson, self-appointed queen of the Magnolia Breeze Estates Homeowners Association chair of the HOA board, head of the landscaping committee, and self-declared protector of suburban harmony. Think small-town dictator energy with a chihuahua and a clipboard. When we moved in, everything seemed lovely. Friendly neighbors, tidy yards, the occasional BBQ. But then I made one fatal mistake. I planted native wildflowers, not on the sidewalk, not in the common area, just in the little garden bed near our porch where the grass never grew quite right anyway. The flowers attracted butterflies. My wife loved them. Kids would stop and take pictures on their way home from school. But to Karen, it was an act of botanical rebellion. Within a week, I received my first HOA violation letter. Unapproved landscaping. It said $75 fine. I was confused. The community guidelines encouraged eco-friendly gardening. I even double-checked. But according to Karen's interpretation of the bylaws, only pre-approved flora within the designated HOA color palette were allowed color palette. Since when did nature have to match a paint swatch? I appealed and attended the monthly HOA meeting, presented a folder with photos, printed emails, even a note from the previous HOA president supporting native plants. Karen smiled, then announced the rules had been updated last month during a special session I hadn't been informed about. The vote 3-2, Karen, her best friend Cheryl, and the treasurer all voted yes. That's when it hit me. She was rigging the board. Every HOA meeting, every landscaping decision, every enforcement letter, it all ran through Karen and her cronies. She was stacking the board with friends, misusing fines to fund ridiculous community upgrades, like imported palm trees and solar-powered dog poop bag dispensers. Things escalated fast. She ticketed me for excessively textured mulch. It was just bark chips from Lowe's. Then inappropriate mailbox ornamentation, a tiny American flag for Veterans Day. But the kicker, she tried to fine us $200 for having a non-standard lawn chair visible from the road, even though it was inside our screened-in porch. I wasn't the only one. The Hendersons across the street got fined for drying towels on their back deck. Maria down the block was threatened with legal action over the color of her garden gnome. Karen was using the HOA handbook like it was her personal scepter. That's when I started digging. Not just metaphorically, I'm talking spreadsheets, board meeting minutes, property records. And I found something interesting. Karen had been approving maintenance contracts with a landscaping company owned by her nephew. No bidding process, no transparency, just neat little monthly checks all paid out of HOA funds. She'd also held 6 closed-door votes in the last year, conveniently, while notifying only a select group of homeowners. The rest of us were kept in the dark while she rewrote policies to cement her power. She wasn't just annoying, she was unethical, possibly criminal, so I did what any good engineer with a minor in contract law would do. I assembled a file, a big one, with receipts, minutes, screenshots, even a notarized letter from the former HOA president confirming the board had been hijacked. But I wasn't going to blow the whistle just yet, no. I was going to wait until she stepped just 1 inch too far, and then I'd drop the whole thing like a ton of bricks at the next community meeting. Because as Karen was about to learn, it's not wise to mess with a retired engineer who has nothing but time and a bone to pick. 2 weeks after the infamous non-standard lawn chair violation, I thought Karen might have finally run out of absurdities to fine me for I was wrong. This time the letter was hand-delivered, not by mail, not taped to my door, but personally handed to me by Karen herself, like some suburban royal decree. She stood there in her pink visor, oversized sunglasses, and a cardigan that looked like it had been crocheted out of passive aggression. "Richard," she said, smug as ever, "we've received multiple complaints about your garden hose. It doesn't retract properly. It's visible from the street, and frankly, it's an eyesore." I blinked. "It's a hose, Karen." "Well, it doesn't match the community standards. And per Section 14B, Subclause 7, visible utility items must be fully concealed when not in use. I'm afraid this is a serious matter. Non-compliance could lead to a lien on your property." A lien over a hose, that was it. The final straw had been watered. You see, Karen didn't know it, but when she delivered that notice, she triggered a legal process that actually worked in my favor, because HOA rules might be ridiculous, but they're still subject to Florida state law. And state law says that before placing a lien, An HOA must provide 30-day written notice, a fair opportunity to resolve the issue, a transparent appeals process open to all homeowners. And guess what? Karen had skipped all three. So while she strutted back to her golf cart like she'd just conquered Normandy, I sat down at my kitchen table, cracked my knuckles, and got to work. I submitted a formal complaint to the HOA board, which she had to read aloud at the next meeting, chef's kiss. Then I contacted the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation and submitted a report outlining the pattern of abuse I documented, complete with 12 violation letters, 3 altered HOA meeting agendas, 4 misappropriated fund trails, and 1 hose. And just to make sure the community knew what was happening, I printed flyers with a summary of the complaint and slipped 1 into every mailbox. Just facts. No accusations. I called it, "What Would Happen If You Got Karen'd Next?" The title got people's attention. Turns out I wasn't the only one who had had enough. Within a few days, I started getting knocks on my door. First, it was Jim from 3 doors down, the one who'd been fined for planting tomatoes in his side yard. Then it was Beverly, who'd once been shamed for her excessive wind chimes. Each one had their own. Karen horror story, each one was furious but had stayed quiet out of fear. Not anymore. By the end of the week, I'd collected 8 more formal complaints. The tide was turning, but I wasn't done yet. Karen, clearly sensing she was losing grip, doubled down. She issued a new HOA-wide mandate that all homeowners must submit photos of their backyards for review, something completely outside the HOA charter. Then she posted a Facebook rant in the community group, accusing me of threatening the sanctity of the neighborhood. Mistake number 1. She named me. Mistake number 2. She used her official HOA title in the post. Mistake number 3. She ended it with, "If Richard thinks he can win, he doesn't know who he's messing with." That was all the evidence I needed. With the help of a lawyer friend from my bridge club, retired litigator, bless her soul, I filed a small claims suit for harassment and defamation. At the same time, I submitted a motion to demand a vote for Karen's removal, which per HOA bylaws could be triggered by 25% of homeowners signing a petition. I got 41% in 4 days. The special meeting was set, and Karen, she was spiraling. She sent out frantic emails, tried to guilt people with teary-eyed speeches, and even offered gift cards in exchange for votes. Yes, I kept the email. It's now Exhibit D. That night, the clubhouse was packed. Every folding chair was taken. People stood by the coffee table, arms crossed, faces tight. I stood calmly at the front, folder in hand. I didn't raise my voice. I just showed every violation she issued that broke protocol, every shady vote she forced through, every dollar she signed off to her nephew's landscaping company without transparency. And then I showed the hose and an actual photo enlarged projected onto the wall. This, I said, is what she wanted to lay in my house over. Silence, then laughter. Then applause. Karen tried to speak, but people were already walking out. The vote was held immediately after. She lost Karen and resigned in disgrace. Her board allies followed within a week. A temporary committee, including myself, Joe, and Beverly, stepped in to review the bylaws and restore order. We repealed every ridiculous violation. We brought in a proper accounting firm. We even hosted a barbecue to rebuild community spirit. The theme, let's hose down the past. Yes, there were t-shirts. My hose still sits in the same spot, still retracts poorly, still offends no one. Well, maybe Karen, but she moved, you'd think, after being publicly humiliated, voted out, and watched half the neighborhood toast to her downfall with bratwurst and iced tea. Karen would lay low for a while, but Karen wasn't built like that. No, she had the resilience of a cockroach and the grudge capacity of a Bond villain. A week after her resignation, weird things started happening. The HOA's new temporary board got anonymous complaints about my shed being 2 inches taller than regulations. A regulation that didn't exist. Jim, our new treasurer, received a letter claiming he had unauthorized solar panels, which were very much authorized and visible in plain sight since 2019. Then there was the newsletter. A poorly photocopied HOA-style bulletin started showing up in mailboxes titled "The Real Truth Behind Magnolia Breeze." It was filled with laughably biased articles accusing the new board of financial misconduct, moral decay, and my personal favorite, destroying the feng shui of the neighborhood. Guess who the listed editor-in-chief was? No name, just a logo of a, you guessed it, magnolia flower. Subtle as a brick. At first we ignored it. But when the 3rd edition of the Rogue newsletter included photos taken from people's backyards, private yards, we realized this was no joke. Karen had found a new game to play, underground sabotage. So I did what I do best, investigate quietly, thoroughly, and legally. I filed a public records request and discovered something fascinating. Karen had registered a new nonprofit called Magnolia Preservation Initiative. And under that name, she'd started sending official-looking letters, soliciting membership dues, and accusing residents of supporting an unlawful HOA coup. She wasn't just writing newsletters, she was building a shadow HOA. Now, according to Florida law, there can't be two HOAs governing the same community and pretending to operate as a governing body without legal standing. That's a serious offense. So I passed everything. The newsletters, the fake dues letters, the nonprofit filing to our attorney. She smiled like a shark. This, she said, isn't just harassment, it's misrepresentation, possibly fraud. We drafted a cease and desist, had it served to Karen directly by a very cheerful process server wearing a No More Karens t-shirt. Unrelated, but oddly poetic. We thought that would stop her. We were wrong. Apparently, Karen had discovered Facebook Live. She started a weekly Karen's Corner broadcast ranting about neighborhood integrity and claiming she was the real voice of the community. She referred to us as the illegitimate board, accused us of embezzlement, again, zero proof, and at one point even threatened to bring in lawyers from Tallahassee. My favorite episode was titled Lawn Chairs and Lies, Exposing Richard. Yes, I got my own segment. I was the puppet master, the snake in the grass, and bizarrely probably a secret Canadian. For the record, I'm from Des Moines. I could have sued her again. But this time I decided to use a different tactic, sunlight, at the next community town hall. I rolled in a flat screen TV connected to my laptop and hit play. I showed clips from her Facebook Live side by side with her nonprofit filings, the fake newsletters, the threats. Then I passed out copies of the cease and desist and outlined exactly how she was violating state law and community trust. And then for the pièce de resistance, I unveiled something Karen didn't know I had. Drone footage. Yup, a neighbor's teenager had recently gotten into drone photography, and one of his videos happened to show Karen sneaking through people's backyards at night, delivering newsletters. You could hear the gasps. Someone even shouted, "She's been in my garden." With community outrage boiling, we contacted the county mediation office, which oversees HOA disputes. They scheduled a hearing. Karen showed up in a pastel pantsuit, clutching a binder that looked like it had been thrown together in a panic. She tried to argue freedom of speech, voter fraud, and bafflingly spiritual displacement. The mediator, bless his heart, let her ramble, then calmly explained. She was impersonating a governing body. She had violated cease and desist terms, and she was liable for civil damages. By the end, she looked like she had melted into her chair. We settled privately. She agreed to cease all community publications, dissolve her fake nonprofit, refrain from contacting residents about HOA matters. In return, we didn't pursue financial penalties or a restraining order, though she was placed under monitoring by the county for future complaints. Karen still lives in Magnolia Breeze, but she doesn't host events. She doesn't wave from her golf cart. She doesn't even make eye contact, and the lawn chair she once tried to find me for, it's still there. Now with a little bronze plaque that says, compliant. You ever think you've made it through the worst of something, a nasty divorce, a back surgery, a Florida hurricane, only to realize it was just the warm-up? That was me, after surviving. Karen, the clipboard queen, the newsletter, ninja, the HOA menace. I thought peace had returned to Magnolia Breeze. Estates, but then Gloria moved in. And if Karen was the storm, Gloria was the flood. She moved into the house right next to mine. A tall two-story that had been vacant for months after the previous owner fled to Arizona allegedly to escape the madness. But at the time, we thought that was just drama. First time I called Gloria, she was out front with a measuring tape. Not for renovations, not to install a mailbox. She was measuring how far her neighbor's hedge encroached onto the sidewalk. Red flag, try red parade. She introduced herself with the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes and a handshake that felt like a real estate contract. Gloria Whitman, she said, former HOA president, 3-time Garden Club chair, and proud Florida native. I just love order, don't you? Martha nudged me that night. She's like Karen, but organized, I shivered. Within a week, Gloria had already hosted a get-to-know-your-neighbor brunch, which was suspiciously just for residents with perfect lawns. Created a Facebook group called Magnolia Breeze 20, The Restoration, and handed out printouts of the original HOA bylaws from 2003, annotated with color-coded sticky notes. That's when I realized Gloria wasn't playing HOA games. She was playing HOA chess. She didn't rant on Facebook like Karen. She lobbied. She didn't sneak into yards. She called code enforcement and CC'd the city. One day I got a letter not from her directly, but from the county development office citing a neighbor complaint about a potential non-compliant shed. Sound familiar? Except this time it was legal. Gloria had found some obscure clause in the original property survey that contradicted a zoning update from 2015. She wasn't trying to manipulate the HOA from within. She was going above it. You remember the old HOA rules? Karen twisted for her own gain. Well, Gloria thought they were too soft. She started pushing to reinstate the 2003 original HOA charter, a document so ancient it still had fax numbers and a ban on satellite dishes. Her logic modernity has weakened the neighborhood's foundation. She went door to door like a political candidate, gathering support with fancy binders cookies and promises that home values would skyrocket if we just enforced the original vision. Some people, especially the ones annoyed by barking dogs or messy porches, loved her. Others like me, the Hendersons, and basically anyone who enjoyed existing were not impressed. But she was smart. She wasn't trying to become president. She was trying to become the architect. Gloria found an old provision in the county HOA filings that said if more than 60% of homeowners signed a petition, they could form a new community development district with separate regulations. It wouldn't be an HOA in name, but it could function like one. She called it the Magnolia Preservation District. Sound familiar? Deja vu never felt so dangerous. Suddenly, flyers appeared claiming the new district would lower fees, restore harmony, and streamline neighborhood compliance. Except what it really meant was Gloria would be in charge of an HOA with less oversight, and folks were signing, "Hess, look, I'm retired. I like Sudoku, grilling ribs, and watching reruns of Matlock. I didn't plan on spending my golden years fighting HOA villain sequels like it's Karen Endgame. But here I was again, so I made another folder. Called this one Gloria. Phase 1 inside her petition. Wording intentionally vague. Misleading statements to residents. A breakdown of the actual consequences of a new CDD. Higher taxes liability issues. New voting procedures. We printed flyers this time with help from Maria's son, who works in graphic design. We launched a website, Gloria, Oregon. Yeah, that domain was available. We knocked doors, talked face to face. Do you want another Karen, but with a law degree and a newsletter budget? That got people thinking. A community-wide vote was scheduled. One shot yes or no to forming the Magnolia Preservation District. Gloria rolled in with matching polos, branded pamphlets, and even a custom podium. We rolled in with fax testimonies and a power strip because the clubhouse outlets always blow. Gloria gave a speech straight out of a campaign trail. Let's return Magnolia Breeze to the prestige it once had. I followed with, if I wanted to live in a gated dictatorship, I'd move to North Korea. I just want to mow my lawn in peace. People laughed. Some even clapped. Then came the vote. Final tally. No 71% yes, 29%. Cue the slow clap. You'd think that would be the end. But Gloria had one last card. She sent an email to the county commissioner full of half-truths, community unrest claims, and a request for an audit of our HOA funds. Just to be sure, what she didn't know, our treasurer, Jim, was already working with the commissioner's office on a community beautification grant. So when the email came in, it didn't trigger an audit, it triggered a visit. The commissioner came, saw what we'd done, met with residents, toured the dog park we built, loved it. Then they fast-tracked our grant, $15,000 to improve the clubhouse, repaint curbs, and install shaded benches around the lake. Guess who didn't get invited to the ribbon cutting? You know that feeling when you see blue lights in the rearview mirror, but you weren't the one speeding. That was me, watching from my porch when the Florida Department of Community Affairs SUV pulled into our HOA. The state had arrived, and they weren't here for a picnic. It all started with an envelope. Cream-colored, official-looking hand-delivered to Gloria's mailbox. She didn't even open it at first. Probably thought it was just another invite to a garden brunch with bylaws. But later that afternoon, we heard the unmistakable sound of a slammed door followed by the rev of a golf cart driven like a getaway vehicle. A few hours later, word got around. The state had launched a formal investigation into improper HOA governance practices. Tied directly to Gloria, apparently someone, definitely not me, okay, it was me, had submitted a comprehensive report to the state HOA Oversight Committee with records of her false claims to county offices, her attempt to establish a pseudo-governing body, the failed Magnolia Preservation District, and her use of HOA branding after being denied a leadership role. This time it wasn't a cease and desist. This was a compliance audit, and it came with teeth. The next morning, a woman stepped out of the state vehicle like she meant business. Short, sharp suit, clipboard, and a badge that said Carla Rodriguez, Senior Compliance Officer. Florida DCA, I waved. She waved back. Gloria did not wave. Mr. Rodriguez spent the day knocking on doors, asking for documents, and conducting brief interviews. She was polite but firm, the kind of woman who probably balanced her checkbook to the penny and didn't play favorites. At one point, I offered her lemonade. She declined, but said, "This is the most active HOA I've seen in 5 years on the job, I bet," I said. "We have monthly plot twists." Over the next week, Carla uncovered more than even I expected. Gloria had been sending maintenance notices on HOA-style letterhead, telling people to trim hedges or risk fines despite having zero authority to. She'd created a donation fund to support neighborhood improvement, but it was in her own name, not the HOA's three. She made an authorized contact with code enforcement to target homes she deemed unsightly, but misrepresented herself as an elected HOA official. She had even ordered custom HOA parking passes with the Magnolia Preservation District logo, which again did not legally exist. When confronted, Gloria claimed it was just community enthusiasm. Carla called it a pattern of misrepresentation and attempted manipulation of governance structures. You know, legal speak, for this lady's been playing dictator. Dress up, Carla organized a community-wide meeting at the clubhouse to go over her findings and allow Gloria to respond publicly. Word spread like wildfire. Every seat was full. Some people brought popcorn. Beverly made a sign that said she did what. Gloria arrived 10 minutes late, flanked by a part-time paralegal friend. She probably bribed with muffins. Carla stood at the front, cool as a cucumber. She laid out everything she'd discovered in a calm, professional tone, complete with handouts, diagrams, and screenshots of Gloria's emails. Then she looked up and said, "Whitman, do you have a response?" What followed was 14 minutes of finger-pointing tears and an unhinged rant about how traditional neighborhoods are under attack by lawn anarchists. At one point, she actually said, "I only did what was necessary to preserve the soul of Magnolia Breeze." Someone in the back whispered, "You mean the HOA soul you tried to steal?" A week later, the verdict came in. Gloria was permanently banned from holding any position in our HOA. The state issued a formal warning and administrative citation for misuse of HOA representation. All materials associated with the Magnolia Preservation District were ordered destroyed, and residents who donated to her fake community fund were issued full refunds, courtesy of Gloria's own account. No jail time, but a permanent compliance record. And in the world of Florida HOAs, that's like being marked for life. Since then, things have quieted down. The new HOA board runs smoothly. We hold monthly barbecues instead of emergency meetings. The biggest argument we've had recently was whether to repaint the dog park bench teal or sage green. We went with teal, democracy works. As for Gloria, she still lives next door, but now she mostly sticks to baking cookies and silently rearranging her bird feeders. She did try to start a book club once, no one showed. So if you've ever dealt with a Gloria or a Karen or any version of a power-hungry neighbor armed with a clipboard and too much free time, just know you're not alone. And yes, there is a way to win with truth, a little strategy, and a lot of lemonade. If this story gave you a smile or reminded you of your own HOA drama, drop a good in the comments. It's our little code word now for those who know. You ever meet someone who seems too normal, like they smile too often, agree with everything you say, offer to help before you even ask, and somehow they know just a little too much about everyone? That was Dale. Preston moved into the corner lot 3 months after the whole Gloria gets state-slapped saga, a breath of fresh air. We thought no newsletters, no petitions, just a guy with khakis, a power washer, and a golden retriever named Boomer. And for a while, things were quiet, too quiet. Dale showed up to community events with brownies. He complimented everyone's lawn. He even helped Beverly change her porch light bulb unasked. But then little things started happening. Cheryl got a notice from the HOA asking her to update her mailbox to match the community's new standard. Jim got a reminder to relocate trash bins within the acceptable setback limits. Maria received a warning for her front steps not meeting uniform elevation appearance. Each letter was polite, friendly, even signed not by the HOA board, but by the Neighborhood Aesthetic Compliance Team. We didn't have a Neighborhood Aesthetic Compliance Team, but Dale had quietly started one. Turns out Dale had joined the HOA board at the last election. Unopposed, slipped in quietly as assistant secretary, a role no one thought much about because, well, who cares about assistant secretaries? Apparently Dale did. Because over the next 2 months, he proposed a revision to the HOA charter, created a series of subcommittees, appointed himself chair of 2 aesthetic review and community standards. The man basically built himself a shadow cabinet, and with the charm of a southern grandpa and the legal instincts of a shark, he had people nodding along before they realized what they were agreeing to. He unveiled it at a town vision night, a slick PowerPoint presentation complete with drone footage, mood lighting, and background music. From the Notebook soundtrack, The Gist. All mailboxes should match white aluminum, solar-lit lawn decorations limited to 3 per home, no taller than 24 inches. All front-facing windows must have neutral curtains or blinds. Approved fence materials, white vinyl only. People clapped, some even cheered. I sat in the back sipping lemonade, whispering to Martha. He just HOA'd our entire block without a single vote. At first it was small grumbles. Why do we need matching mailboxes? Why can't I have flamingo lawn art if I want it? Did we vote on this? Then came the violations. Polite but firm notices. No fines. Yet, just reminders of community standards. But when the reminders stacked up, 3, then 5, then 8, per household, people started sweating. Dale wasn't using fines to control behavior. He was using paperwork. One woman had to submit a formal application to hang a fall wreath. Maria got flagged for a non-regulation wind chime again. I miss Karen, someone muttered at the mailbox kiosk. Let that sink in. I'd played this game before, twice in fact, but Dale wasn't brash like Karen or power drunk like Gloria. Dale was calculated. Everything looked legal, transparent, gentle, but I knew what to look for. I dug into meeting minutes, discovered Dale had revised the HOA voting structure, now allowing silent assent if residents didn't object in writing within 7 days of policy updates. He held emergency votes during weekday afternoons when most people were at work. He bundled minor aesthetic changes into maintenance proposals which didn't require full board approval. In short, Dale had turned HOA governance into a paper maze, and most people didn't even realize they were already inside. Then it happened. You can remember Jim, our treasurer, Vietnam vet, and all-around no-nonsense guy, got served a pre-lien notice. Why his backyard grill was visible above the fence line. A grill, that's when the neighborhood snapped. The sweet, passive-aggressive Dale facade cracked. People started knocking on my door again. Richard, we need another folder. So I made one, called it Operation No More Mr. Nice, HOA. At the next HOA meeting, we packed the clubhouse. Dale wore his usual khakis and pleasant smile. Just here to support community beautification, he said. Then I stood up and read line by line every backdoor amendment he'd snuck through. I passed around copies, played audio clips from meetings, even had screenshots of his silent vote policy with timestamps proving they were posted during work hours. Then Jim stood up, held up his pre-lien letter and said, I didn't survive Quezon just to be taken out by a man with a clipboard and a dream about matching mailboxes. The room exploded. The board called for a confidence vote on Dale result. Yes, remove Dale, 81%. No, keep Dale, 19%. The smile left his face for the first time since he'd moved in. He packed up his PowerPoint, declined comment, left the building like a man whose TED Talk had been cut short. Since Dale's departure, we've rewritten the HOA charter properly. This time, all major changes require a full vote. No more emergency bylaws and mailbox variety. Strongly encouraged. We even created a new slogan for our community. Magnolia Breeze, come for the peace, stay for the personalities. Have you ever met a Dale or worse? Have you not realized you're Dale yet? If this story reminded you of a neighbor who was just a little too helpful, or if you've been through the HOA trenches yourself, I'd love to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell us your HOA horror story, or just type, good if you're glad you made it to the end of this saga with your sanity intact. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because trust me, I have a folder labeled HOA, Untold Stories, and some of them you wouldn't believe.